Hello, everybody. Yeah, as told, I'm from Estonia. Do you know why Estonians are famous for, or for what? If Skype is the right word, the correct answer is that Estonians are one of the slowest people in the world, right after Finns, but we have the second place, so we're doing well. I'm from the company Fortumo, and I'm talking here a little bit what we're seeing in different regions in the world. Something we see in Southeast Asia, Latin America, and what we see is how telcos are getting more and more into banking business. So something to take away from here. But before we move into the kind of the banking and telco world, then a few words about Fortumo, so where we sit in this business. So we are the digital enabling platform. So what we do is we're helping digital companies, app stores, music and video streaming providers, but also all sorts of digital companies, starting from taxi services, insurances, and all others, to acquire new users in emerging markets, monetize them, and retain them. We're doing that in 100 markets and focusing mostly in emerging markets. Southeast Asia, Latin America, Middle East, and Africa. These are the regions where we see where traditional fintech services are actually under-adopted. So we are kind of mostly helping our merchants to monetize the users who do not have bank account and credit cards. How it works and how the world works is that when we're looking Western markets and when we're looking Central Europe, then typically over 90% of the people do have bank accounts. Close to 50 or over 50% of the people have credit cards. But when we shift to another part of the world where actually the population is way bigger, so when you think about Europe, then Europe stands for, I don't know, few percentages of the global population. So when we go to the other side of the world, then hardly banking penetration is about 50%, credit cards are in single digits, which means that people still need access. So it's a cash-based economy, but people still need access to different services. And oftentimes there are different mobile money initiatives, mobile money wallets, and different wallets which are kind of on top of it. And if you would think that typically banks and fintech companies are addressing that, or PayPal, then you're wrong. So 90% of those things, those initiatives are done and managed by the telcos. Why telcos are doing that? Very good question. So this morning we've been talking about different banking trends, why banks need to change, why they need to go into different verticals. There was an example about the Finnish bank, which actually started their own hospital, and different other examples. So telcos are seeing similar things. So some things in the world are changing. So some things are very, very sure, like tax and death. Everything else is changing over the time. So what telcos are seeing is that also their market is rather penetrated, which means that their average user growth and their revenue growth has been slowing down, which means they also need to think what they do in 10, 20, and 30 years. And when you start thinking about the telcos, and then maybe just kind of think yourself out of Poland or think yourself out of Europe and put yourself in Indonesia, Brazil, Vietnam. In Indonesia, the population is 190 million, slightly bigger than Germany, UK, and a few other markets combined, right? So when you think about those markets, so what telcos have? Telcos have always the biggest and the best brand recognition in their market. So they know their local market, and all the people who are living in Vietnam know Vietnamese telcos. They don't necessarily know banks, if they don't use bank services, but they know telcos mostly. Other thing what telcos have, and what most of the companies don't, is they have organic user growth, which means that when we're thinking about the world these days, then telco services, I'm talking about texting, calling, and using data, are becoming sort of like a living standard. So if you are without them, then you're sort of a freak, right? So what it means is that regardless what telcos are doing, they're still getting new users every single year, because depending on the country, regardless where you are, people who turn into certain age will have a cell phone, will have a smartphone, and will have a cell phone. Soon everybody has smartphones, which means they have an access to the internet, and they can use services, but they always have the relationship with the telcos. And when you start comparing telcos and banks, then they do have pretty similar kind of infrastructure. So when you're thinking one part of the bank business is having to do the KYC, the network of the offices, well, telcos have that already. So they don't need to build anything. And this is an overused phrase, but the biggest housing company in the world, Airbnb, doesn't own any hotels. The biggest taxi company, Uber, well, questionable these days, doesn't have any taxis on their own. The biggest media company, Facebook, doesn't create any content. Where does it lead? The one who owns the customers actually owns the business, owns the value, brings the biggest value. And putting those things together, then who are actually owning the customers in emerging markets and here? Telcos do. What telcos have, besides the infrastructure of the point of sales, they also have a lot of data about the users. So they can predict your behavior, they have a lot of data about your consumption, they can authenticate users, they can add a lot of information regarding whether you want to give a loan to them or you want to authenticate them. So what we've seen in different markets, so a couple of examples. Some telcos have had a bank license. So this is Telenor Group. They have an Easy Paisa wallet in Pakistan. So they have a banking license, and they've done different deals and promotions with different online shops where people are encouraged to pay with their Easy Paisa wallet in order to get discounts. So basically, they're already hijacking some of the users and getting that real money, cash, to their wallets. Also, that's fine, but still they need banks, and when the cash economy does not exist, everybody needs to move to banking. Yes and no. When we're taking the biggest success in mobile wallets, M-Pesa in Kenya, then actually people are getting their salaries to the M-Pesa wallets. So Red Cross is paying to their people, to the wallets, also most of the other companies there. But that doesn't only kind of resonate with classical banking services. What telcos are also doing is that they have a massive marketing arm. So what Telia does, and I'm also a Telia customer, and this is super annoying, every time I land and I switch on my phone, I get a text message that, hey, Martin, do you need a travel insurance? And I cannot opt out as well, which is super annoying. But I mean, they make money, and lots of money with that. So what I'm trying to say is that telcos know when you're roaming and what you do and when you do, which means that they have a lot of data. Based on that, they can give you loans, they can offer you different insurances. But that goes beyond. So what's happening in Philippines is that companies not just are providing those banking services and are not just providing different sort of fintech services on top, whether these are like loans or other things, but you can also have remittances. So people, Filipinos working abroad, can wire money through international money remittance companies to their wallets. But the very same companies are having their own cards, their own debit cards, which means that people do not have to have bank accounts anymore. So you are wired so your relatives are wiring your money to your wallet, and you have your bank account card that you can kind of swipe it in the point of sale. So no need for traditional banking. So to sum it up, these were the few examples. Things are a bit different in Europe. Banks and fintech is more established, but maybe something to think about for the future, especially when the fintech services are expanding beyond Europe. So different models. Telcos as customers, telcos are marketing channels. So think about who owns the customers, who owns the brand, and how that can be combined, and maybe it's better to work with. So, and the closing remark is, just think which part is easier, whether going to the market and trying to acquire new users as a new bank, or actually convert the users that telcos have already to a banking customers. Which one is easier?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.